controversial, disapproval, public disagreement. To say every winner in Survivor history has been accepted or embraced by the audience would be a hot take. It would also be wrong. A part of what makes Survivor so compelling is how subjective of a show it is, how each cast creates their own micro-society, deeming certain aspects of the game worthy of merit. No two winners are exactly the same. Well, except for the two-timers, but even then, each of their wins wasn't received exactly the same. When I say controversial winners, I'm talking about how the audience received them. Public reception is a hot topic. Before, during, and especially after each season, it floods the internet message boards, the spaces, the chat servers, the discussion areas, and, at one point in time, the notorious office water coolers. But regardless of whether we're bitter or pleased at these outcomes, here are what I believe are the 10 most controversial Survivor winners, starting with number 10. Hot off the press, not too far from when this video was published, I have the 10th most controversial Survivor winner as Erika from season 41. Yeah, imagine that. Controversy even in the latest era of the show. 41 seasons, Survivor has still got it. I almost had Erika as an honorable mention, but I think with all of the newer fans brought into the fandom via Netflix and during 2020 and 2021, that Erika warranted a consideration. Because, quite frankly, I, and many others out there, did not see Erika's win coming from a mile away. Like a murder mystery, she was hidden deep in the background of the cast and only emerged towards the end after everyone else began to trip over themselves. I've said Erika is one of the most underrated winners in Survivor, and I suspect that's a take that'll hold for quite a while. Many fans were led to believe that Xander was likely going to win the season, or if not Xander, then possibly Ricard. Ricard appeared as the frontrunner going into the endgame, but was taken out, and so this freed up a spot for another frontrunner to seize the day. Xander was an underdog from early on in the season. He held an idol all the way until the end. He was a part of the big knowledge is power juke out at the merge, and he received plenty of screen time to justify why he could be the winner. Yet, he didn't receive a single vote from the jury. Understandably, many in the audience were miffed and confused. Some felt led astray, others got angry and began shouting, "Xander was robbed!" We're going to be hearing that a lot in this top 10. But on the flip side, if you rewatch the season, you will notice Erika is present when she needs to be. She never goes to tribal in the pre-merge, she smashes the hourglass at the merge, she flips on the dominant alliance at the right time, wins immunity at all the right times, and ultimately socializes best with the cast. Not every winner has their hand in every cookie jar in every episode. And on a more meta level, Jeff has been pushing the new era of the show as fast-paced and a monster of a game. You gotta hit the ground running and make big moves. And yet, Erika was somewhat of an antithesis to all that. She definitely had some big moves, but the editing never featured her until the very end. And so when I consider all that, it's not surprising to me she was a polarizing and controversial winner who will likely hear about it for a long time.
I get underestimated because of like how I look and my size. I created the alliance that dominated the end game, and I was always making sure that the biggest threat to me went home. I have everything it takes to win.
Winner of Survivor 41, Erika. All the rest are yours as well.
Number 9. Every era of the show has its fair shake of controversial winners. My next winner is from half the show's lifetime ago, and it is Sophie Clark from season 23 South Pacific. Newer fans embrace Sophie as a stronger winner today, given how she fared on her second appearance, but it should be said that this reception was not always the case. Back on season 23, Sophie was even more under the radar than Erika. She popped up now and then to remind us of her take on events that were happening in her tribe, mostly to just their coach under the bus, but overall, she was never front and center to the narrative. She was a key player for sure, but the inner workings of a steamroll tend to get glossed over when your alliance is led by a larger-than-life returning player such as Coach. And then you gotta factor in Ozzy over on Redemption Island, who was making the comeback of the century, winning duel after duel, or you're paying attention to Brandon Hance and his relationship to Russell, how much Brandon was a focal point of every Opolu scene, or even after all that, you got Cochran, the linchpin of the season, who dramatically changed the direction of the game at the merge. With such strong, memorable stories being told all at the same time, it's easy to understand why Sophie suddenly isn't getting so much focus. Or at least, it's easy to understand why Sophie winning could be deemed controversial. When you're heading into the finale with Ozzy just one challenge shy of finally winning the game, or Coach, who's been the figurehead of the dominant strategy for much of this season. But Coach was more the hood ornament to the engine underneath it, and despite his strategic chops, Survivor has always been a social game that encourages fostering fostering strong relationships. Leveraging religion is going to make others feel icky, and go figure, the only player who wins from the most religious alliance in Survivor history is anything but. But Sophie was not accepted by many fans as the rightful winner because she wasn't larger than life amidst this cast. She wasn't a returning player. She played a very practical game that wasn't flashy. She was regularly understated. She was barely shown in most episodes. Sophie struggled with accepting herself as a worthy sole survivor, something we saw come up in Winners at War by several winners. And if you're ever wondering why she might feel that way, here you go. And then amplify it by like 1,000 with social media.
When it came to outwitting, I made a 5-person alliance from the beginning, but I made sure that my strategy revolved around it. And when I met Coach, I saw him as the equivalent of a young girl. He was someone who said to me, my loyalty is worth more than $1 million. That's a guy who's not gonna write my name down.
In my real life, I'm not a devious person. I'm not a strategist. And it came to bite me.
I think it's probably my fault, because I was his strategist, so.
The winner of Survivor South Pacific, Sophie.
I probably came into this game feeling like I was a bottom tier winner, and it's been fun realizing that I can hold my own.
Number 8. This is gonna get dubious. Not so much because I think this winner shouldn't be in this top 10, but because I wonder if they should be higher. I spent more time pondering the order of this top 10 than I have for almost any ranking in over 5 years of making videos. I even consulted outside sources to make sure I was being reasonable and fair. Number 8 is Sandra Diaz-Twine and her second win from season 20, Heroes vs. Villains. And let me tell you, at the time of watching this season live, there was so much controversy over whether she should have won or if Parvati or Russell deserved it more. There still is to this day, although I do think it's less amplified than it used to be given Sandra's return appearances. Sandra's a fascinating controversial winner. She wasn't all that controversial the first time she won. Heck, she beat a player who was already voted out. Now imagine if Lil won Pearl Islands. Who would vote for a player already voted out? Sandra was one of only 4 prior winners entering season 20, and she was likewise sitting next to another at the final tribal. She had no votes cast against her all season that counted. She was underestimated for her social game, especially by Russell. And she was loud too. She spoke her mind. As we saw 13 seasons prior, she certainly had the chops to win, so what made her controversial this time around? The answer was the narrative, and how vocal her losing finalists were about their loss. More Russell than Parvati. Sandra was nearly invisible in the pre-merge as she blended in with the majority alliance. She was then spared right before the merge, attempted to flip on the villains at the merge, and then decided riding with the villains to the end was a better bet because, as she put it, future jurors like Rupert would vote for her to win regardless. She had a great read on her relationships, but on the flip side, it needs to be said that Russell and Parvati dominated the course of the game. The idol finds, the key flips, the decimation of Boston Rob's alliance, of the Heroes Alliance. Parvati's merge episode gameplay is some of the finest in Survivor history. A lot of Sandra's gameplay appeared tactically counterintuitive. It was hot and cold. At times it was working, other times questionable. She didn't play much of the physical game, and when you combine all of this with Russell's bloated edit, how much of his version of events dictated the lens through which we viewed the game, once the average audience member gets to the end of the season, it's quite jarring to consider how neither Parvati nor Russell won. Even Russell humbled himself a smidge by saying Parvati deserved it. Even he was willing to step aside. If nothing else, that right there probably tells us everything about why Sandra should be in this top 10.
Does the fact that you're the only person who has won twice, does that make you best player ever?
It makes me the queen.
However, I mean, I have to argue because I've played 3 times and I've lasted the most amount of days, and I'm kind of a challenge dominator, so.
Best player ever, Sandra?
Do you really want me to explain this to you? I think there is a flaw in the game.
A flaw in the game of Survivor?
Yes.
Okay.
If she can win the game twice.
The one thing I've always maintained is whoever won that season deserves to win that season. That's the way it plays out. That's the hand you have. It's the people that you're surrounded with. If you win it, it's your game, it's yours.
Number 7. But before Russell, before Parvati, before Xander's controversial win, there came a time when life was simpler. Idols didn't exist, advantages didn't exist, the gameplay was a tad more basic. And so the only thing us fans were left with was a vague understanding of how these jurors got so bitter and emotional and didn't vote the way the audience wanted. I'm talking, of course, about Boston Rob losing to his future wife Amber on Season 8 All-Stars, the first returning player season in Survivor where 18 former players came back to play at least one more time. When it comes to categorizing controversial wins, I lump them into several groups. There are the winners who the audience questions if they deserve to win at all, regardless of who they sat next to. Then there's the winners where the audience understands why they won, but doesn't believe they deserve to be at the end, usually due to some outside forces. And then there's the winners such as Amber, who unintentionally divide the fan base and create a polarizing A or B scenario with two parties split down the middle. When Amber won, the two parties were either pro-Boston Rob, believing that he should have won, or anti-Boston Rob, believing he didn't deserve it. He either played cutthroat and savvy and masterminded the rest of the cast demise, or played slimy, dirty, overly personal, and needlessly disloyal. It was like when Kathy gave her jury speech and said there were two paths ahead of Rob. One where he treats the cast like the friends they were, and then the one he took. And that is a massive understated component of understanding all this controversy amongst the public. The audience only sees what they see on screen. They didn't experience being on the ground in Panama, in the grime, the muck, the dirt, Rupert's water bunker, watching for the first time ever as pre-existing friends tore each other down for the chance at a quick buck. And so to them, and me to be fair, from the comfort of our own home, we can easily disassociate from the bitter feelings of loss when it's not us who has lost. The audience will always be willing to trust what's shown and raise an eyebrow to what isn't, even if what's shown is misconstrued or highly edited, or clashes with pre-existing beliefs. So when this All-Stars jury gets up and gives the most emotionally fueled, bitter final tribal we had ever seen, for many fans, we don't feel the same way. Many fans fell in love with the romance of Rob and Amber. Many fans loved the backstabbing Rob did to Lex and Kathy and Alicia and Big Tom, but obviously those jurors didn't. And that right there is going to create the great divide between public expectation and outcome. Between watching an active player provide strong, memorable TV moments and reconciling with the fact that it would ultimately lead to his loss. And in between all of this is Amber, who won the season.
But I just want you to know that you used some friendships as stepping stones to get there. I think you could have taken a parallel course where these people wouldn't have been left in carnage and they would have been feeling a little bit better about their decisions tonight. And maybe that's some immaturity, I don't know, but there was another path right next to you, you didn't see it.
Boston Rob, in many ways, with all due respect to the other 17, this was your season. Subject to a lot of controversy, you dominated strategically, no matter how you look at it. We'll talk about the consequences of that. The winner of Survivor All-Stars.
Number 6. And now I'm cheating, because I am splitting the difference and including two winners here for the price of one. Consider yourself lucky. It's your lucky day. This is actually going to be a top 11. What's new? And that's because I have the two original winners in Survivor history at number 6, with Richard Hatch from Season 1 Borneo and Tina Wesson from Season 2 The Australian Outback. There was a moment where I had both of them in my top 5, even as high as putting Rich at number 1, but I realized that was more due to the sheer quantity and number of disagreeing viewers than perhaps overall percentage. Even if 50 million people were watching back then, would I say 90% of them disagreed with Hatch winning? Not really. While I can say the general public thought Kelly and Colby should win, in both cases, Rich and Tina were controversial, but for different reasons. Seasons 1 and 2 are in a league of their own for viewership. With Season 1, the public disagreed with how Hatch played the game. Alliances, strategy, scheming to manipulate the vote, it was dirty, it was unfair, it sucked the fun out of the experience. Why do they have to rig it? Why can't anything be pure? The winners should be the ones who charm us the most, who provide at camp the most, who won the most challenges. The best players should be the ones who are the most deserving. Yeah, deserving. About that. America is about to get a harsh lesson in what it means to deserve to win this show. This was a massive public reaction way back when that dramatically affected Season 2 and Tina and Colby and how they chose to play. They wanted to both be strategic, but do so with a good guy stigma. Show that the good guys can win in the end, and be smart about it. Whereas Hatch was cocky and Kelly just wasn't very endearing, Colby was young, fit, charming, athletic, humble, and he had a great relationship with his mom. What can you say? He was a hunky cowboy. And how could you not want to see that Hershey bar win the game? Full tilt. That said, Tina was cunning. She played in the background. I have said it before, she is the most underrated winner. She caught flack for looking through Kel's bag, for voting out Marilyn, for flipping on her alliance pre-merge, for not being more motherly than the public demanded. Moms are not supposed to be this shrewd. Oh, honey. But Colby losing was only as controversial as you are accepting that he made his own bed when he didn't take Keith to the final 2. The public wanted a Colby win, but they chalked it up to him fumbling at the 1-yard line. Contrast this with Kelly Wigglesworth and the public. They also wanted her to win more than Rich, as she was the underdog who turned on the evil Tagi alliance and went on to win 4 immunity challenges in a row. Kelly did the best she could. Rich just outsmarted all of them. Kelly took part in the alliance, but then leaned into the public's perception of this being slimy. She was morally conflicted, whereas Rich was confident this was totally fine. Come on, it's the audience who's being self-righteous. What's wrong with a little bit of strategy? Very conflicting public emotions for both wins, and so because of that, I've got them side by side in my top 10.
Sean's ethically against any kind of alliance, and I hear Gretchen is similar on the other side, and I don't get it. This has absolutely nothing to do with this. It sounds like sheer stupidity to me when somebody says, oh no, I'm not going to build an alliance, and I hope they wouldn't do that either. I giggle and think, okay.
The winner of the first Survivor competition is Rich. Congratulations, Rich.
The one thing that I hope that you don't do is that you don't cast your vote based on that you got your feelings hurt. You don't go into backgammon and say, okay, I'm going to leave this man open. You know you have to cover that man. That's the strategy. There was never anything personal about voting anybody off. There was a strategy, and that's all it is.
The winner of Survivor, the Australian Outback.
And what a way to end part 1 of this 2-part series. Right where it all began, with the first win and controversial winner in Survivor history. But don't worry, part 2 and my top 5 are right around the corner, and let me tell you, I have a lot to say for this top 5. In the meantime, let me know who you think is in the top 5, who you hope, and what you think about the list so far. A big thank you to my patrons for supporting me every month. Uncontroversially, I will just say that it goes a long way towards having a reliable income. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to let me know which losing player was robbed on your way out. Come on, give it to me. I want to feel that frustration. And I will see you in the next one, once I dig up an old Peridiam classic tweet, because damn, it's about to get real bitter.
The person that wins and deserves to win is the person that gets the majority of the jury vote.
I don't think she deserves it. She didn't even get in the top 3 for fan favorite.
Yeah, Natalie, what is it like sitting next to such a gracious loser?